How's it going, everybody? It is your favorite apostates. I, of course, am McKay.
And I am Jordan.
And we have returned for another one. It's going to be a little late this week, and we apologize about that. But it's been a crazy weekend. A lot has been going on. Last week, Jordan's laughing.
Otherwise, I would cry.
Yeah. Anyway, last week, we had our Mormon Stories interview premiere, and a lot of you turned out and showed some love to us and the Mormon Stories community. So we thank you. You are all amazing. And
if you want to listen to us bare our souls and share way too much information on the internet, go watch them.
I put it in a playlist right here. That way you can see and listen to the madness that was going on in our lives. Anyway, with that also came a huge outpouring of support. I had mentioned on this channel and on that interview that we wanted to upgrade Mike's situation, and a bunch of you turned out and are showing support and making that happen. So I have enough funds that I can justify it. We've gotten enough patrons that I know we can pay it out, and I thank every single one of you. I think this week I will get things ordered, and then probably the week after next, we will have a new audio setup. So I am super excited about that, and I'm super thankful that everybody turned out and wanted to help us out in that aspect. So you're helping us grow our channel, and you're helping us with growing our reach. I also wanted to shout out just really quick. I got this shirt from a band called the Holy Ghost Tabernacle Choir. I was just looking at my stories on Instagram, and Full of Hell was playing a show in Savannah with a band called the Holy Ghost Tabernacle Choir. I was like, what? Whoa, that sounds like Mormon Tabernacle Choir. Whoa, let me check this out. Checked it out, and a lot of stuff that they talk about in their songs was really, it really resonated with me. So I reached out to him. I was like, this is kind of weird, but have any of you guys been Mormon or anything like that? Because you guys could, plus the imaging, the Tabernacle Choir situation, which I guess isn't really exclusive to Mormonism. And they said, no, they hadn't, but they had seen our videos, and they were like, let me send you some stuff and for free. And I said, no. And I obviously paid them for it, but they share a lot of the same values as I do, at the very least, and Jordan, and a lot of the same values that we have on this channel. So I was like, you know what? I want to give them a shout out. They are what I would classify as extreme music. So if that's something that you're interested, go check them out any place that you stream, or on their Bandcamp. They are freaking awesome. I've been listening to them nonstop. So anyway, that's my little soapbox. I will turn it over to Jordan because we are going to get started with today's video. Sorry for the long bit.
Okay, so we have wrapped our series on the temple.
We still have the second anointing.
Just kidding. My brain was putting that together as I said that. There is one more Inside the Temple series, but that will come at a later date. But we are moving back into the Mormon Influencer series that we started a little while ago because we had such great response from you all about it. And we've had a couple questions. So we are going to continue that series. And today we are beginning with the probably most obnoxious and probably one of the most well-known of the YouTube Mormon family vloggers. And that is 8 passengers.
Yay, boo.
Boo. Boo. We have done a video on 8 passengers before. We did a reaction video to a bra shopping video that they did with their young daughter that was highly inappropriate. If you would like to go watch that, it's quite an older video. McKay will link it.
Yeah, I'll throw it up there.
But this is a much updated version. And the reason that we have decided to cover 8 passengers is they are extremely Mormon. Very Mormon. We've covered a lot of Mormon influencers that do not take on Mormonism as part of their brand identity.
This is one of them that's like the core tenet, basically.
It is. So they are not one that sets Mormonism to the side and you got to do some digging in order to figure it out. They are very, very, very open about their religion and how it dictates like pretty much every aspect of their lives. So as we jump into 8 passengers, just a little 1 disclaimer and 2 a trigger warning. There will be a few things that we talk about in here, which includes child abuse. If that is triggering to you, then we understand this might not be the video for you. The other thing is 8 passengers have garnered a lot of controversy for actions along with what people would term child abuse. And that definition obviously varies by the person, and I am not claiming that they are child abusers, but this is what this disclaimer that we are about to give is about. So 8 passengers do a lot of controversial things that get them a lot of negative and maybe some positive attention. We are not here to make a decision or assign a label to either Ruby or Kevin or their channel as a whole. We are not declaring them child abusers. We're not declaring them terrible people. The purpose of this video is to look at some of the things that they have done, why it's garnered such negative reaction, and how all of this relates back to Mormonism. So, that being said, the negative attention that these 2 have received have gone, in the past, extremely far. CPS, Child Protective Services, has been called on these 2. They've also received death threats over the choices that they have made regarding their children. And so, we do not advocate or endorse or encourage any of those things. There is rarely good things that come from calling CPS on people that you have a parasocial relationship with, where you don't have all the pieces, you don't have all the information, and you personally do not know who they are. I would encourage you to read up on what a mandated reporter is and what that looks like for the state in which you reside. But in this situation, I don't think it is appropriate to call CPS on a family, a popular family, that you do not know or do not have firsthand witness of what has happened to these children. Okay. This is coming from a social worker. Okay. Like this is my encouragement to you.
Yeah. And a former mandated reporter as a teacher.
Yes. So look at what the laws are in the state in which you reside and abide by those laws. Okay. That's my advice to you. In my experience, there is nothing positive that comes from a random person on the internet calling about another random person on the internet with limited information. Doesn't help anybody.
Yeah. There are people who are a lot closer to this family who can do that. So
exactly. So if you don't know them personally and you're not witnessing it firsthand, that's a story for another day. Okay. The second thing is not appropriate to reach out to these people in an extremely negative way. No death threats, no harassing, no Instagram messaging, spewing negativity, bombing their comments. Like, none of that is helpful.
You don't reinforce bad behavior at all.
Especially
like this.
It creates a backfire effect. They dig their heels in further, they get more obnoxious, and they just want to stick it to you because you're throwing it in their face. We are absolutely proponents of calling out people for what we perceive as bad behavior, but perceptions widely vary based on the person and who you are and your values. So, we do not like 8 passengers and do not appreciate the things you do. You might like them and watch them and respect their parenting. That's okay. We do not. So,
that's your opinion.
That's your opinion. If you like them, you're probably going to not want to stick around here.
Yeah, you're probably not going to like this because we are very critical. This also brings me back. We've mentioned this before. I was like, when we first did this, I was like, who the hell is watching family vloggers and why? I want to acknowledge there are people who watch this kind of content, and they probably do have valid reasons. I can see the allure of it, especially if it's coming from they have the kind of family that I never had, and that's something that I would, like to see or like to somehow participate in. That's definitely a valid reason, but we definitely have to be careful how we consume this kind of content. And if you've listened to us or seen any of our videos prior, you know that we don't approve of the way that they use their family basically as income. And it's funny because we've seen a video recently with all like kids that are leaving and everything like that. Ruby just can't seem to have any content to put out there on the internet because I guess maybe everybody's tired of her shit. And she's not that interesting, apparently. So there are valid reasons. And if you're like, oh, I just like the train wreck or whatever, maybe choose something that doesn't focus on other people's children and allows them to exploit things about those children. Just a request. So
if you do like watching these people, even if it is for the train wreck, you can download their videos or use other websites that take their video off the YouTube platform. So you are not giving them the views and you are not contributing to the ad revenue that they are taking from that video. So that is something to consider, even if you're hate watching or watching the train wreck, because there are other ways to do that without actually supporting their channel per se.
But I would just say, just don't. It's a lot simpler.
That's our preferential.
Yeah, I just wanted to get all that out of the way because it's been a while since we've touched on this subject. So just kind of reinstating some of the things that we talk about.
Massive disclaimers. Okay, and the last one will be, as we make our way through this video, we are former Mormons, right? We are ex-Mormons, post-Mormons, whatever you would like to call us. And as we navigate through this video, we will be giving you context potentially on Ruby and Kevin's actions and how that might exist within the framework of Mormonism and how that might motivate their behavior. So with the giant, again, disclaimer with not all Mormons, right? Anytime we talk about Mormons, anytime we talk about any of these things, there's always a million Mormons in the comments. They're like, not all Mormons. And so that is implied.
This is not my experience, so it didn't happen. That's not the case.
We always strongly imply this is not all Mormons. We don't have an issue with Mormons themselves, except for in some cases, it's mainly an institutional problem. So if you are a Mormon and you're not doing these things, then do you need to take these things upon yourself as an insult? No. I don't think you do. So that being said, let's dive in, shall we?
Let's do it.
8 Passengers are one of the biggest Mormon family vloggers out there. They are huge. They're well known. I would say most people who run into them in Utah County would know exactly who they are. They're perceived as very Mormon famous within Utah County.
Mormon famous.
I think a lot of Utahns know who they are. So that makes kind of inflates their heads a little bit. It pains me to say that 8 Passengers has 2.3 million subscribers. Yes, you heard that correctly.
That's a high 2.3. That's 2,360,000.
So they're well on their way. These people, this large Mormon family who really doesn't do anything extremely significant, has 2.3 million subs on YouTube.
Yeah. Notably, a lot of their videos are like them going to the hospital and
car accidents.
So
lots of Mormon clickbait things that a lot of them do. Bucket list fam, not enough Nelsons. They all kind of employ the same tactics.
Yeah, if you've ever seen a single of their videos, it's basically 90% bullshit and then maybe 5% of the stupid topic that they're talking about, the little clickbaity bit, and then the other 5% is their annoying, stupid intro.
It's really difficult to watch. They've had the same logo since they started, and it is the most hideous thing I've ever seen. So, 8 Passengers, they started in 2015. So, from 2015 to, what are we in, 2022?
Yep.
They've hit 2.3 million subs. Now, that's crazy, right?
Yeah. Not unheard of, but for like a family vlogging channel is pretty substantial.
So, the 8 Passengers are made up of Ruby Frankie, who is obviously the most controversial of them all. And then we have Kevin Frankie, which is her husband. So, the interesting thing that kind of even goes one step further when you're delving into Mormon family vloggers is Kevin actually works for Brigham Young University, which is owned by the Mormon Church.
Interesting.
So, they are like hella deep. They are deep in this stuff, right? And Ruby has a bunch of followers on Instagram. Kevin has an Instagram account and followers. They also have children, many of which I won't name because I don't feel it's necessary. The 2 oldest, one of them is actually a college student at Brigham Young University. And so BYU through and through in this family.
I think you actually are like a shoo-in if your parent is an instructor or professor or anything.
Or if you're
BYU.
donating millions of dollars in tithing to the
Yeah.
church. We'll get to that later. So we have that oldest child whose name is Sherry. She has her own Instagram account. And then we also have their second oldest, which is Chad, and we will get back to him in a minute. He just turned 17 and will likely, at least the way that Ruby portrays it on her Instagram, be going on a mission within probably the next year or so. And then they have other younger children that I don't feel it is relevant to be named. Their 8-year-old daughter did, however, just get baptized also recently as well, and they put out a video about her baptism. So as I mentioned previously, they started their channel back in 2015. That was when their first vlogs were posted. They were very unedited, simple, roll things in one take, kind of just random put together home video style vlogs. That's when they started back in 2015, and they started their Instagram, and that's when everything began. By the next year, in a few months-ish, they hit 100,000 subs. So that's within a year. As far as
wild.
YouTube channels goes, that's significant. And then a year later, they went from 100,000 subs to 1 million in 2017. So
Massive growth.
that is massive growth. That's like
1,000% in a year.
That's
Or 1,000%.
that's unheard of. I don't know who else has done that. There's probably people out there, but as far as like Mormon family vlogger content, that's insane.
Yeah, and being openly Mormon is kind of weird.
Exactly. So they are not quiet about their Mormonism. I chose this photo because it's so perfect. It is representative of the mid-late 2000s.
It's a funny thing, and this is probably just church culture, but like once there's some popular aesthetic in your church, like everybody does it. It's funny. Like it's the reason why everybody hangs the family proclamation in their home, which they probably have that hanging in their home too. I don't know if
Probably.
I've seen it, but yeah, it's kind of funny.
Color coordinated church outfits. This color scheme was very mid 2000s, very Pinterest board, very cringy Mormon at the time. So I wanted to include that because I think it's funny. And then you see lots of things on Ruby's Instagram that continually points to them being actively involved in the church. Pictures of them in the church building, pictures of Ruby at the temple, pictures of them going to date night. They even went on vacation to Hawaii and took a picture in front of the Hawaii temple on vacation, as a lot of Mormons do. That's not uncommon within Mormon culture.
Okay.
Is to visit other places and take pictures.
And take pictures at the temples.
Of the temple.
That's hugely Mormon. Well, and then recently they had that baptism videos, the vlog.
Yep.
So it's at the forefront.
They're not quiet about it. So that being said, one of the biggest reasons that we advocate that people not watch channels like these is because one of the most important, one of their requirements in Mormonism is you have to be paying 10% of your income in order to get into the temple. So basically, you don't get all the privileges and you get denied rights if you cannot attend the temple. And so for Ruby and her family, for them to be actively going to the temple as they portray in a lot of their videos and in a lot of their photos, they are paying 10% of their income to the church. So it doesn't take some wild thinking in order to come to the conclusion that 8 Passengers generate a ton of revenue from their channel, from their sponsorships, from their ads, their deals. All of those things generate quite a bit of money for them. So when you think about that money and you think about 10% of that being donated back to the Mormon church, that's why we encourage you not to support these people.
Yeah. Let's hit on, just to reiterate for people who haven't heard, or maybe this might be their introduction to us because you're a new listener. Welcome. This is implied that even though somebody's actions aren't directly harming anybody, even if they say they advocate for the LGBTQ community, which is something this family doesn't. We'll get to that in a bit.
They claim to, but
yeah, words mean nothing to me. Let me show you. Show me by your actions. But what the church does is actively oppress people who are in the LGBTQ community, and claim that they aren't valid, which is objectively false. That money is going to a lot of the lawyers that they have on retainer to cover up sex abuse situations and things of that nature. There's a myriad of things that this tithing money does that the Mormon membership will say, oh, tithing just goes to the paying for the buildings and for the churches and things like that. But there's so much extra.
That's not entirely true.
That is not the entire truth. So that's why we always like to hit on the tithing and supporting these people, because it's not just, oh, they're making a charitable donation to the church. It's what the church is taking that money and doing that is actively harming people. So,
also to know, in 2020, a news article came out that exposed the church thanks to a whistleblower who provided documentation that the church has over $100 billion in an investment fund. And you could do a lot of charitable giving with $100 billion, but do they do that? Absolutely not.
Apparently, God is all powerful, but not enough for a rainy day.
You could basically end world hunger with $100 billion plus dollars, but they give like 2% of that money in charitable giving each year. So if you're new to why Mormons are, and Mormonism as an institution is not great, then you have come to the right channel, because we will describe it in detail for you.
Yep.
Okay, now back to the original. So as we touched on just a moment ago, within the LGBTQ plus community, there was a video that I watched of recent. It was like a little brief TikTok that talked about where essentially Ruby put their two of their kids on the spot, and we're like, what have we told you about the LGBTQ plus community? And they were like, well, you never, like, you told us it wasn't bad to like who you like, and it was like very scripted and awkward. And she essentially was like, well, there's some people within the neighborhood that are LGBTQ plus, and I think I'm just accepting that, we just love them. And it was so awkward. Like, it's really not hard to put this in like very blatant, easy, simple terms, which she did not do.
Did they just see people with pride flags around the neighborhood and extrapolate that to, oh, you got a rainbow flag? That means gay, obviously.
Probably. So that kind of flies in the face of this video that we will show you. When did all this stuff with Chick-fil-A happen?
Oh, in 2012.
2012.
Yeah.
So this was a while ago. This was a long time ago. So they decided that they were going to go to the mall because all this controversy was happening with Chick-fil-A, and that they're, very emphatic stance on that marriage is between a man and a woman. So Ruby and Kevin felt very passionate about this issue, and so they went out to support Chick-fil-A.
Okay, this is us waiting in line to eat at Chick-fil-A because we're supporting marriage between man and woman. And here's the end of the line. And we're just going to follow the line. We've got a long wait.
Anecdotally, this whole situation tracks. At that particular time, I was working at a Chick-fil-A that was owned and operated by a person in our ward or local congregation. And this whole situation was like huge within our region in the church because we had people who worked there. So literally, I probably could name better the people who I didn't see that day, but it was insane. And not all Mormons felt the same way about this situation. And if you're around, then you knew kind of how it was. But it was insane how all these Mormons flocked to Chick-fil-A and like, oh, yes, I'm going to buy a chicken sandwich because marriage is between a man and a woman, and wait in line for fucking hours in order to do that. It was just unreal.
So that was a big deal at the time. Notably, we should say that Chick-fil-A, the franchises can be owned by whoever, right? Yeah. People of all religions, doesn't matter. But the actual business itself is owned by, isn't it Baptists?
Yeah, they are not Mormons. So when I worked there, somebody was like, "Oh yeah, this is a Mormon-owned establishment." I was like, "No, but okay."
The franchise people might be Mormon, but
yeah,
head of Chick-fil-A itself, not Mormon. So let's be clear on that. Notably on the church's website, this is straight off the website. You can go read this for yourself if you so choose. I don't know why you would, but it's there. So they very much clarify that there is a distinction between same-sex attraction, which this is what they call, being part of the LGBTQ plus community is being attracted to the same sex. They call it SSA.
Yes. Yeah, there's literally...
There's no, nuance to that.
Yeah, there's basically no nuance. Erasure of a lot of different people, but we've talked about that before.
We have. So they say it is not inherently a sin to be attracted to the same sex, like to a person that is the same gender as you. That is not inherently a sin. As most people say within Mormonism, acting on that attraction is a sin. So they say marriage between a man and a woman was instituted by God and is central to his plan for his children and for the well-being of society. Strong families guided by a loving mother and father serve as the fundamental institution for nurturing children, instilling faith, and transmitting to future generations the moral strengths and values that are important to civilization and crucial to eternal salvation.
Doubt.
Mormons are very, very intense about the nuclear family, okay? They make, I think recently, one of the church leaders made a comment that was like, what'll happen if everybody's just gay and then there aren't any children and what's going to happen? You get the point. So essentially, this thought on their end is very much in line with Mormon teachings on what they would deem as same-sex attraction, homosexuality, etc. So... another concept that kind of aligns closely with Mormonism that Ruby has talked about at least a few times is Mormon dating. So Mormon dating is more of like a cultural thing. There's a handbook within the church called For the Strength of Youth, and it is...
We're going to have to do a deep dive on that at one point.
We should.
There's a lot of shit in there.
It's a hot mess in there. And so essentially this is like a pamphlet or a handbook that's given to the youth, and they're basically like forced to live by it and are,
Yeah, it's like, I don't know if forced
forced
is the
probably
way,
isn't right. Guided by its teachings would probably be a better way to put it.
For example, if you were a person who were violating these standards, you would probably get, like, when you were interviewed by the bishop and you revealed this, he would probably recommend reading from this pamphlet.
And you might need to go through the steps of repentance.
Write essays or some shit like that.
Yeah. You might need to repent, whatever, blah, blah, blah. That's something that we'll get to in a minute.
They're commandments, but not.
There's a little more wiggle room. So this is straight out of the handbook that For the Strength of Youth pamphlet. You should not date until you are at least 16 years old. When you begin dating, go out with one or more additional couples. Avoid going on frequent dates with the same person. Developing serious relationships too early in life can limit the number of other people you meet and can perhaps lead to immorality.
Oh.
Invite your parents to become acquainted with who you date. Choose to date only those who have high moral standards and in whose company you can maintain your standards. Remember that a young man and a young woman on a date are responsible to protect each other's honor and virtue.
Wow. So that's kind of an interesting thing. I like how they're like, oh, it can lead to what is
immorality.
Immorality is like the secondary thing, but it's like, oh yeah, it can limit the number of people you meet and lead to immorality. Like, okay.
It's a quick jump there.
Yeah, I know you're going or you're getting at. Why would you put the other thing in front of it? Just say the immorality piece. Jeez.
Do you allow your kids to date? And then other people will get on and comment and they're like, no, Mormons aren't allowed to date before they're 16. No, it's forbidden for her kids to date before they're 16. So the word allowed and forbidden, I think depends on what you think allowed means. So do I allow Chad to date before he's 16? If by that you mean, am I going to stand in the doorway and forbid him to leave the door if he's going out on a date? No. If that's what the word allowed means, then yes, he's allowed.
So Ruby's response to this is kind of a little more nuanced, and she kind of talked about this in like a weird roundabout way. I think this was more of I'm not forcing my kid to I'm not gonna stand in the doorway and not let him leave. And
but I'm going to put the fear of God in him so that he will
do what I say
with what I want. So good one there.
Their response to this one is like a little more flexible than a lot of Mormons. Like, I personally was not allowed to date until I was 16. And so that was like a really hard and fast rule for a lot of Mormons. And a lot of Mormon parents are really rigid about dating as far as individually. Like, you only go on dates in groups. You only go with friends together. It's not like an individual thing. And some Mormons are way less strict about that.
Yeah.
And so it's kind of a spectrum about dating. So she seems like she is a little more flexible on it, but that could also just be her being like, well, he knows that he's not allowed to date before he's 16, so he's not going to come to me with a date before he's 16. Stupid.
Okay.
Recently, when was that? 2019? 2019. So recently in 2019, the prophet of the Mormon Church, Russell Nelson, decided that he was going to go on a crusade about the name of the church. And so, as all of you are here, and as many of us do refer to Mormons as Mormons, it's the Mormon Church. That's what they've always been referred to as. They spent a gajillion dollars on a marketing campaign for the I'm a Mormon, marketing, all that fun stuff to really drive Mormonism into people's heads. Like, they spent a lot of money on that. And then Russell, good old Rusty, decided that he didn't like it.
I think it's important to note that he has not liked it since at least the 90s.
That's true.
And he's spoken on it, but the big dogs above him were always like, you know what, Russell? No. And
we
they would
like
just do what they wanted.
So when Russell took the reins, he decided that we were going to do away with the Mormon label. And he said this in no uncertain terms. This is from an Associated Press article, which states the president of the Mormon Church, which is funny, reiterated Sunday that he wants members, the media, and others to use the faith's full name, saying nicknames are a major victory for Satan.
Whoa.
Addressing the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints twice yearly conference in Salt Lake, he said the church's name is non-negotiable. When the Savior clearly states what the name of the church should be and even precedes his declaration with, "This thus shall my church be called," he is serious, Nelson said. And if we allow nicknames to be used and adopt or even sponsor those nicknames ourselves, he is offended. So all of you out here who are calling these people Mormons are personally offending Jesus. I hope you know.
So that ties in with the Jordan showed that clip a second ago. I don't know why this was in with Mormonism, but this is what Ruby's had to say about that.
But in our church, and we're not actually called the Mormons. Mormons is actually a term that was a discriminatory term years and years ago. We're members of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints.
I think she's very tangential.
I'm not really sure. And the fact that she said it was a discriminatory term that was used years and years ago, like, it is 4 years. Not even that long ago.
Stop, Ruby.
So I
Stop.
understand. Whoops. I understand where she was coming from in that, like, there was a lot of persecution and terrible things that happened to the average Mormon who was just swindled into this religion. But yeah, don't act like me saying Mormon is like oppressive to you, because it truly is not.
So
that's
we refer
funny.
to them as Mormons. We don't care.
Yeah.
We grew up as Mormons, so
we will continue to use that term. We're ex-Mormons. So
we don't care.
We still fall under the Mormonism umbrella, even though we're not members
Mormon
of
anymore.
that church anymore. So you can never get away from it.
So that's what most like active church-going Mormons have adopted within the last few years, especially Ruby, and all of her further Instagram posts or her references in YouTube videos will always be the long-winded name instead of Mormons. She takes it very seriously.
These are the people who will specifically not use your pronouns.
It's true.
So
Just
keep that in mind whenever they're like, oh, yeah, you have to say Mormon.
Yeah,
you can't say Mormon.
ironic, isn't it?
Right?
In line with Mormon dating, it's kind of goes quite nicely with it, is Mormon dress codes or Mormon standards of how you present yourself and your appearance. Ruby often goes on tangents about modesty and dress, especially since she has teenage girls. So this video was a perfect example of her placing the very rigid standards of Mormon dress onto her teenage girls and being very intense about her opinions on it.
I don't want my girls dressing provocatively. And they don't want to be dressing like little girls. My girls are way too big for the little girl section, and they're much too young for the women's section. If you can find a size 14 or 16 in the girls section, you will find that they are designed for a 7-year-old.
I don't even know what this is.
So you have the hearts, the flippy sequins, the loud words and bold prints that are designed for a girl much younger.
Yay. I get it. I'm a disco ball.
And not to mention...
Okay. I've got a lot of... I'm going to keep my mouth shut on this one.
The girls were funny in this one. I will hand it to him on that. But that's...
I could totally see now why this channel would not exist without the kids, because wow, they really are doing the work.
And here's the thing that gets me about this is I don't know what section of any clothing store that Ruby is shopping in as a Mormon woman that would be too provocative for a teenager. Like, Ruby wears the most modest, normal-looking clothes for a Mormon woman that I've ever seen. It's like normal, culturally Utah-appropriate outfits. And
yeah.
I don't know why she couldn't just take her teenage girls to the adult section that would be fitting for them, like the petite adult section that has normal, unprovocative Mormon clothing.
There's a mall
clothing.
right down the street from their dad's work where they could go that would run the gamut of anything that a Mormon teen or preteen could want and wear that's trendy for the area. Where is she shopping?
Like, she shops in the women's section. Ruby shops in the women's section, and what she wears is appropriate. So I don't understand. Like,
I don't know.
Women's clothing is inherently booby shirts and low-rise jeans and
crop tops, tube tops,
the like.
That's the only sort of women's clothing that exists out there. So maybe go to the men's section.
Go to the same section you're shopping in, Ruby.
Why is it that I can wear this shirt and Jordan can't?
It's true.
It's just clothing.
Gendered clothing is stupid. So this kind of sticks quite rigidly to Mormon standards about dress and appearance. So this is also out of that same pamphlet for the strength of youth, and this is what it says. Never lower your standards of dress. Do not use a special occasion as an excuse to be immodest. I think that kind of hits on the prom or homecoming or just because it's prom doesn't mean you get to dress and show your shoulders.
That's always a huge point of contention for a lot of kids.
When you dressed immodestly, you send a message that is contrary to your identity as a son or daughter of God. You also send the message that you are using your body to get attention and approval. Come on. Immodest clothing is any clothing that is tight, sheer, or revealing in any other manner. Young women should avoid short shorts and short skirts, shirts that do not cover the stomach, and clothing that does not cover the shoulders or is low cut in the front or the back. And then, we've got to throw the young men in here as like a courtesy.
Just so you know, we're talking about both, even though we're really just talking about young women.
Young men should also maintain modesty in their appearance. Very specific. Young men and young women should be neat and clean and avoid being extreme or inappropriately casual in clothing, hairstyle, and behavior. They should choose appropriately modest apparel when participating in sports. Volleyball short shorts. The fashions of the world will change, but the Lord's standards will not change.
Wrong.
And then importantly,
they do change all the time.
Do not disfigure yourself with tattoos or body piercings.
Oh, I've got the long sleeve on. I can't show off my tattoo.
Young women, if you desire to have your ears pierced, wear only one pair of earrings. That was a prophet declaration back in the 90s, I want to say.
Gordon Hinckley.
Yep. That you could only have one piercing in your ear, which I thought was funny when Sherry got her little inside ear piercing. I was surprised that Ruby didn't throw more of a fit about that.
That is pretty scandalous.
That is pretty scandalous. So here you have the long list of things. There's a lot of cultural things as well that tie in with these things, like at BYU, Idaho. I don't know if this is at Provo too, but BYU, you can't wear leggings.
Yeah, they have to be, well, you can't like wear them at all on campus, but you can only wear yoga pants at the gym, which is, I think, even still kind of up for debate.
Come on. Really? Which my mom told me when I was in high school that I was only allowed to wear leggings if I had a shirt long enough to cover my butt. So I think there are a lot of like...
It's a shame.
There's a lot of weird, like, additional... My mom lets me wear the... Like, I had friends in Young Women's who were allowed to wear shorter shorts, but my mom wouldn't let me. And it just kind of varies based on the parent.
It's kind of like that. My mom lets me say ass, hell, and damn because it's in the Bible, but, like, for clothing.
Yeah, basically.
Basically.
So that's why they're really rigid on these things. It makes total sense. Plus, they're all going to school in Utah County, which is predominantly Mormon. And so it is highly likely that the people around them are, for the most part, following these same standards as well. So that's just something to know.
Are those people also struggling to find clothing that is not overly loud with their graphics and such?
Maybe Ruby should make some friends and find out.
Maybe she should start a business and do it if she wants.
So going back to Mormon dating, there is kind of this weird cultural intensity around marriage. So obviously, similar to other religions, in order to get married, you know, you can't do it before you get married, right? You can't have sex before marriage. So that is very, very strict within Mormonism. If you do that, you are told you're committing the sin next to murder, 1. And 2, it requires confession to a bishop, and you have to walk through the repentance process. And if you do that before... Like, you can't go to the temple and get married in the temple, which we have a video about, unless you have repented and fixed those things. So there's some very intense rigidity about especially young single adults dating within Mormonism. Because there's a lot on the line if you screw up.
Major, yeah. This is not just some little oopsie-doopsie kind of situation. This is like social status is on the line kind of situation. And people will say, oh, well, it's not that bad. You can repent, you get married civilly and then get sealed. But I mean, can you? Is that really the same thing? Are people really going to look at you the same way?
There's immense judgment, especially where they live. Like, you're going to stand out like a sore thumb if you're doing stuff like that, because all kids do things wrong, right? But the kids that are within Mormonism that are having a hell of a time, which was me, you stand out. And that
Big
does
time.
not help you with friendships and trying to navigate high school and things, which are already hard enough. So in this video, Ruby and Kevin's oldest daughter, Sherry, is talking about when she thinks she will get married with the input of her other siblings.
And we're also all kind of taking bets on when we think I'll get married. Really? Eve wants me to get married now. She's like, just get married now so you can have kids. Chad thinks I'll get engaged this summer between when I'm 19 and 20. Russell thinks when I'm 21. I personally think it'll be around 20.
I think like 21. So I'll be like not even 16.
That's so weird. Okay, I think everyone kind of agrees around like 20 or 21-ish. So we'll have to see.
I don't even dating.
Maybe you'll get engaged when you're 20. But get engaged when I'm 20? I want to get married in the summer though.
So something notable, Jordan was about to turn 21 when we got married. And Jordan thought she was an old maid by that point. 21.
It's true.
And that is just like the kind of a culture that you walk into when you come here to Utah, where people think that 21 is old to get married. As somebody who didn't serve a mission, like these older male return missionaries are supposed to come and sweep up the girls like right after they get out of high school, which is kind of weird. But anyway, it's like
those of you who aren't steeped in like Mormon culture are probably going to look at this and be like, oh my God, the oldest age that she said was like 20, right?
Yeah.
Or 21.
21, yeah.
Other Mormon people, we've talked about this before. Other non-Mormon people will be like, are you serious? Like 18, it's encouraged for girls to get married as young as 18 if it's appropriate. Like if it's appropriate to the time and place.
I know a bunch of people who are like that.
So this is not outlandish by any means. This is very on brand within Mormonism.
Yeah.
So the next thing I wanted to highlight is we do get questions about this from time to time, not very often, but from time to time. I'm going to roll this clip that we have of Ruby talking about this, and then we will go more in depth on what she brings up.
So many of you are asking questions like, why in the world freeze dry your food? Why not just eat it fresh? We eat all of our food fresh for the most part. The reason we're freeze drying food is for food storage, purely for food storage. So if there's ever a run again on the stores, and if there's ever an emergency or an earthquake or something crazy like that, I would not have to be one of those moms at the grocery store coming home with an empty cart. I would have plenty of food already on my shelves at home.
Well, first off, you don't take the cart home, so I hope you don't come home with any cart ever.
Oh my God.
But
she's confused about what to do with the cart.
Oh yeah, okay.
There's a lot of carts
That's
in the
fair.
garage.
What? You're supposed to put them in that corral? I thought it was weird when people left them.
That's why they have the vans. They can fit the cart.
There you go. Okay.
Oh
Is there really
Anyway.
anything that says that that's illegal?
I don't know.
I don't think I've ever seen that explicitly stated anywhere.
You can't take ducks from the park, but if you're Ruby, you can take carts from the grocery store. We are not saying that Ruby takes home carts
Okay,
from the
yeah.
grocery store. That's a joke.
Okay. But on a serious note, the whole food storage thing is kind of interesting. That's kind of a weird way to describe it, but I mean, it is true. It is for times of need like that. I think most of the times they're kind of planning on like an apocalyptic level event where people would need food storage and things like that. It comes from a good place. It is good to have supplies of food or whatever, so that if you weren't able to get out to the store or there just wasn't anything, you're still able to survive. But
There's nothing wrong with being prepared.
no, there's nothing wrong with being prepared. A lot of Mormons take that to the extreme and kind of go into the like apocalypse prepping kind of stuff and things like that. So
Which the church recently has added to their handbook to discourage people from extreme prepping. Because one, it doesn't make the church look very sane when you've got a bunch of Mormons that are like, the end of times is nigh, and they're like filling out their basement with food.
yeah,
The interesting thing about the Mormon church is they have and produce their own food storage.
I used to haul them bitches, the big old boxes of these things.
So you can go online, or it's mostly online, isn't it? They don't have much at Deseret anymore, do they?
It would be at the distribution center.
The distribution center.
Yeah.
So you can buy them in person at certain church condoned, church owned
Distribution centers.
centers within, I don't know how many there are outside of Utah.
They're usually at or by the temples outside of Utah, but they're pretty dotted
Few and far
here
between.
in Utah and the Morador and things like that.
So if you're in Utah, there's a variety of places you could go to get this. Do you have to be Mormon to buy food storage?
No.
Okay. So you, as a regular non-Mormon person, if you're watching, you could go get this yourself if you wanted to. But you can also buy them online. So here is their very cute food storage. It is very nicely, like the aesthetic here is pretty cute, actually.
At the very least, it's void of ads, so that's nice.
That's fair. That's fair. Here is what the church says in particular about food storage. So they say there's 3 main components: food supply, which they suggest you have at least 3 months, and then you have water supply and a financial reserve. So they say to store foods that are part of your normal diet as part of your 3 months, and then continue with your long term, adding staples like wheat, rice, pasta, oats, beans, and potatoes that can last 30 years or more. 30 years.
Yeah, that's crazy.
So they have to specify how much you need to kind of stray from that extreme prepper type thing going on, right? So take the amount of food you would need to purchase to feed your family for a day and multiply that by 7. That is how much food you would need for a 1-week supply. Really?
Wow, that is quite the formula they got there. I wonder how they deduced that one.
Wow, very confusing. Once you have a week's supply, you can gradually expand it to a month and eventually 3 months. For longer term needs and where permitted, gradually build a supply of food that will last a long time and that you can use to stay alive, such as wheat, white rice, and beans. A portion of these items may be rotated every 3 months supply. So they give you a guide, some outlines, a framework for how to plan, how to use food storage, how to even buy food storage. So this is like a very much in-house operation. They're like, you need food storage. Well, guess what? You can buy our food storage.
Yeah.
Funny how that works, isn't it?
Food storage is a thing that a lot of people practice here in the United States. But it's also something that they encourage people to do abroad. I remember when I was working at the distribution center, we would send little new member packages to people who are recently baptized. I remember sending a bunch to Jamaica one day, particularly, where we would send a book or a triple combination with the Book of Mormon, Doctrine and Covenants, and Pearl of Great Price, a copy of the Bible. These were like the cheap ones, of course. Not going to send the nice ones to new converts. But they would also send in that package a copy of the pamphlet that was cited down there, All is Safely Gathered In, so people can practice self-reliance down there too, or wherever they're sending them. So it's kind of interesting.
Sending religious pamphlets.
Yeah. Sending pamphlets to people.
There are a lot of things that Kevin and Ruby have done that are controversial that we kind of hinted at the beginning of this video. Some of the things people would deem child abuse. I'm not here to tell you whether or not they are. That's for you to decide. But there are also plenty of videos out there on YouTube, on TikTok, that discuss these things that they have done in detail. So I don't want to dedicate a lot of time in this video to discussing those things because it's been so played out in other people's videos. And if you really want to go in depth and watch those, then they are available to you. There are just a few things that I want to hit on in context of Mormonism that don't really make the most sense. So there are a few things. Probably one of the most controversial things that they did is they sent their son to a wilderness camp, kind of a reform behavior,
troubled teen
situation type thing. The interesting thing about this camp, because it just keeps, the rabbit hole of Mormonism, it just keeps going, right? The interesting part about this camp in particular was it was founded by Mormons. And at the time of its founding, the founder was polling students that were attending BYU that were being expelled or suspended for breaking the honor code, for being bad Mormons. He was taking those students and throwing them into his little reform the youth into respectable human beings camp.
Okay.
So that's fun, right? So it doesn't really surprise me that this is the camp that they picked. I'm not going to really go into detail about what it is. I don't really feel that it's relevant or necessary. Again, that information's out there. But the other part of this that was really upsetting to people is in a variety of news articles and a variety of TikToks and even in a video that Ruby shared herself that I will roll for you in a minute. It has been well established that Chad, their second oldest, was sleeping on the floor. On this, obviously, when they were out in the wilderness, he's sleeping on the ground. But in their own home, when he gets in trouble, he was not allowed to sleep in a bed. He was sleeping on the floor. He was sleeping on a beanbag. He said for at least 7 months that he slept without a bed, which a lot of people would find problematic, as we do as well. But here is one of the things that Ruby had to say about it.
Chad didn't get any room. He didn't get anything. He was sleeping on the floor in the family room, and he just got the bedroom back. It hasn't had a flip phone, a smartphone, any kind of phone, and it's been over a year. And I still have no intention of returning a phone. And you may never get the phone back.
Probably not.
Well, like, I don't have friends.
I don't have friends either.
Yikes. Like, I understand, like, as a teenager, I just wanted to sleep on the couch in front of the TV because that's where Netflix was. But, like, if I was sleeping on the couch for an extended period of time like I was, my mom would get mad at me. She's like, sleep in your bed. the fact that this is backwards and she's like, no, you got to sleep in this beanbag. You don't get to sleep in your bed is like, oh, man, just.
I think this is
backwards.
a terrible, terrible, terrible parenting tactic. Borderline in my mind, what I would deem as child abuse. I do not feel it's appropriate to take away a bed from a child and to demand that they sleep on the floor. We are parents,
It's
so
inhumane.
I cannot imagine doing that to my child, no matter, if he's just being a shit like most teenagers are, like I was. I get holding consequences and I get holding them accountable and enforcing things when they're having, episodes of bad behavior. But this is not, in my opinion, an appropriate response. It's kind of inappropriate. And he's a teenager. He's young. He's going to be a shit. That's what teenagers do. They break boundaries. They push back to see if you're going to hold those boundaries. But when you hold them, it doesn't mean that you need to take away their bed. Like, that's just not. And I think the thing what kind of really stings for a lot of people is how casual she is about it. Like, she's not like, oh, it was a really tough decision for me, but we chose to take away his bed. And she's like, you didn't have anything. You were asleep on the floor.
I know.
Like, it's not funny. Like, it's not funny to do that to a child. And then to just perpetually take away all of his things. Like, my mom did the same with me. I get that. I understand. And it's not ideal because it just leads a child to be broken down and discouraged because nothing is ever going to work in his favor and he's going to be beaten down. And it's just not appropriate.
I've seen a lot of people, they'll be like, oh, well, you guys, you only see a little snippet of it and you don't understand the whole situation. And I'm like, okay, obviously that is true. We don't understand the whole situation. But isn't it a bit of a red flag that this is the part that they filmed and edited and then put out there on the internet? That's what they're okay with putting out on the internet?
It's a little frightening to think about what she won't share.
Big red flag for me. So
this is a huge red flag. Huge red flag. Like, they have said in
so many filters it passed.
Yeah.
That's what made it through.
They've said in the past, and they've said like in their videos and YouTube comments and things, that throughout this whole process, they've consulted mental health professionals. And, the mental health professionals that Ruby chooses to associate herself with should not be mental health professionals. So I don't really know that the advice that she's getting is really like make you think about your actions and how you're responding to your son advice. I think it's more of I'm going to find the professionals that align with my kind of go-tos for what my consequences are.
Professionals.
And I'm going to align with them to kind of support what I'm doing, because I'm being really rigid and really strict and almost to what many people would think to a fault. And so I'm not going to go to just any mental health professional. I'm going to go to one who agrees with those types of consequences and then just kind of allows me to echo chamber, chill in this, hold your kids accountable. It's fine to take away their Christmas presents type echo chamber going on here, right? So that's just one example. The other thing that was really astounding to me was she films these things, and it just, I don't understand. And I'm not going to throw this video up here because it's really, as a person who experienced child abuse, is really disturbing, and I kind of wish I wouldn't have seen it. But essentially in the video, one of her daughters, I think it was one of the youngest ones, I think she was like 6 at the time, essentially was cutting things in the house. She must have like just gotten scissors or something and was cutting things around the house. And Ruby told her that if she didn't stop cutting things in the house, she was going to take her stuffed animal. And she's holding the stuffed animal in her hand, and she's like, I'm going to take your stuffed animal and I'm going to chop off his head in front of this like 6-year-old child. And then of course she starts sobbing, and Sherry, the oldest sister, is behind her and like takes her in and hugs her and is like, okay, you're not going to do that again, right? Like, what the hell is it when Sherry's being a better parent than Ruby? Like, honestly, doing that to a child as a social work intern, I'm like,
no way,
astounded by that behavior.
Well, and this would be one thing, but this is a person, I will find the post and put it up there. This is a person who prides themselves at being very adult, even from a young age. Doing something a fucking teenager would do? Come on.
That's very immature.
You're not an adult. You are a child.
That is someone, these poor children are going to have to go to therapy for a long time, which I encourage everyone to go to therapy for any reason ever. But this is going to be a traumatizing experience for a child. I could easily see someone coming into my office and being like, my mom sat me down when I was 6 years old and threatened to cut off the head of one of my beloved stuffed animals because I was doing something that most children will do at least once or twice as a freaking child. Like, that's going to stick with that kid. That kid's never going to forget that.
How about you don't give unfettered access to scissors to your children who are not yet really quite of age to handle it properly, or have fewer kids so you can police them more.
For sure. Well, and the other thing, she's just very careless. It sometimes comes off with her children. And I think this is somewhat of a thing within Mormonism, with some parents who feel that the only really way to demonstrate love for your children is to be like ridiculously strict, ridiculous with consequences, and ridiculously firm on punishments. I know a few Mormons, at least anecdotally in my experience, who were like that. And so I'm thinking that Ruby might fall into that category. But this is not an all Mormons type of behavior type of thing.
Yeah. I can see where it comes from, because they profess that they worship a loving God who is actually a vengeful douchebag all the time. So I can see why that behavior has been modeled for them. But yeah, it's definitely not an all Mormons. A lot of Mormons understand true love and true empathy. And maybe sometimes it's not applied liberally enough to all parties, but at least within the family it can be. So.
Well, and we're going to roll a clip from something that happened in December of 2021, which was recent in the context of this video, which ruffled quite a bit of feathers when this came out. And she has since doubled down on her stance. But let's roll this for you, and then we will talk about it. And this is kind of where I'll wrap it up.
Okay.
I'm scared to share this because knowing people these days, Kevin and we had we had 6 children. The 2 youngest are showing long patterns of selfishness. They have been showing through their choices, their unwillingness to repent, their unwillingness to feel sorrow over some pretty egregious choices that they've made.
How egregious can they be as children?
So Kevin and I have decided that we are going to give the gift of truth to them this year for Christmas. We are going to give them the gift of boundaries, and we're going to give them the gift of repentance. So we sat down with them, and we told these 2 what our expectations were again, and we let them know how deeply sorrowful we've been because of the choices that they've been making, and how it's affected their teachers at school, it's affected their peers, it's affected our home, the siblings.
You just laid it out very clear. And we told them that this year they are not going to be visited by Santa.
So they will, and we prepped them, we let them know that the Christmas morning, their 4 older siblings will be getting Christmas presents to open, and that they will have the gift of love from their dad and I. Because we want them to really have a visceral experience that hits them. So up until now,
That's good enough for your...
Yeah.
Okay.
I'm just gonna throw it out there on this one. I did not edit the sound. That was not me. I don't know if that was a joke or whatever, but it was.
It's kind of funny.
It is kind of funny.
The content is not funny at all.
No.
This is...
I swear to God, she just learned a couple like mental health community buzzwords and just threw them out there. The gift of truth, the gift of boundaries, the gift of forgiveness. Like, they didn't seem to have any content to them. It was just words in a word soup sentence, kind of like this, what I'm just saying now. So.
Well, here's the thing. This is, in my opinion, as a parent, as a human being, this is egregious. Like, this is so messed up, especially since they have siblings and they're sitting there on Christmas watching their other siblings opening up their gifts. And I will throw up this picture that was, I think I found it in I think it was in the Reddit sub for 8 passengers. But in this picture, this poor kid is just sitting there with absolute sadness on his face, watching his other siblings open all their gifts, knowing that he's not getting anything. And the second thing that I want to point out here is that these kids that she's taken it away from are young. It's not her teenagers. Yeah. Like under the age of 10, I'm pretty sure.
The one one of them was baptized just 3 months prior.
So she's 8.
She was 8. What kind of egregious choices? Egregious was the word that she's describing it with. That's the word that I would use to describe a terrible crime like murder.
Yeah.
Egregious choices. What does that mean? What can this 8-year-old be doing that's egregious?
What is so bad? Like, I cannot. And she mentions like teachers in school, and like as a former teacher, I'm like, okay, are they talking too much in class? Are they passing notes?
What is an 8-year-old doing?
Are there being snots like sometimes kids do? But do they deserve to have their Christmas taken away from them? The other thing that I wanted to point out that she said is these two are getting the gift of love from Kevin and I. And that right there is the biggest red flag probably in the whole video, is because that shows me that she's willing to withhold love from her children to send a message. That should pain you inside. Your ability to give and withhold love to make a point, to send a message as a consequence. Like, you guys are such freaking shitty kids, but your dad and I are going to give you the gift of love this Christmas, even though you don't deserve it.
Yikes.
And then we wonder why Mormon kids have such self-esteem and shame and worthiness issues and all of those things that they're taking upon themselves, because this is the kind of shit that's being regurgitated to them.
Yeah.
And she said, wanting their kids to have a visceral reaction. Like, you want your kids to have that? Really?
Is that a brag?
Like, what?
That's not something to brag about.
No, it's not. And, we'll be the first person to call out bullshit within the Mormon church, right? But we'll also be the first people to stand up for Mormonism in the ways that it actually is beneficial. And I feel like the church's teachings on forgiveness are at least pretty liberal.
Or it should be, at the very least.
Not that Mormons always apply it that way,
yeah.
But the way in which it's taught is a lot more, I want to say the word forgiving, but it is. Like, let's consult the handbook.
Let's check what they're supposed to believe.
So in the handbook about forgiveness, it states, in addition to seeking forgiveness for our own sins, we must be willing to forgive others. The Lord says, ye ought to forgive one another, for he that forgiveth not his brother his trespasses standeth condemned before the Lord, for there remaineth in him the greater sin. I, the Lord, will forgive whom I will forgive. But of you it is required to forgive all men.
Well, one of those is a little girl, so she's exempt, right, Jordan?
In the everyday circumstances of life, we will surely be wronged by other people, sometimes innocently and sometimes intentionally. It is easy to become bitter or angry or vengeful, looking at you, Ruby, in such situations, but this is not the Lord's way. The Savior counseled, love your enemies, bless them that curse you, do good to them that hate you, and pray for them which despitefully use you and persecute you. He set the perfect example of forgiveness when he was on the cross. Referring to the Roman soldiers who had crucified him, he prayed, Father, forgive them, for they know not what they do. So in the context of Mormonism, let's think about this for a minute. Jesus is like, forgive the Roman soldiers for literally killing my ass, but Ruby can't forgive her under the age of 10, 8-year-old children for being snots some of the time. Imagine the worst thing a child can do, and I still don't think that this consequence would have been appropriate.
No words, honestly.
No words.
In a lot of cases.
That's the church's stance.
Yeah.
You're supposed to forgive. The church is very against anger. I can hear a lot of bitterness emanating from Ruby, anger and bitterness. And that
towards
is
children. And I'm not going to say that when people do you wrong in a lot of cases, I'm not going to say that's inappropriate necessarily.
No.
But children, we're talking about children.
Yeah.
So I don't think that's necessary.
No. We'll be the first people to tell you that you don't need to forgive people who have wronged you, especially in certain situations.
So when we're talking about this in this context, in a lot of other circumstances, this is just not applicable, but
we're talking about children.
Come on.
What message? This is not sending the message that she thinks it is. This is not doing what she hopes it's going to do. Like, this isn't going to be a relationship strengthening tactic. This isn't going to be something that strengthens them as human beings in the way that she wants it to. This is going to make them resilient in the fact that they should have never had to experience this, and yet here they are.
Yeah.
Like, it's not doing what she's intending it to do. This is very much I'm doing it because it's going to make me feel better to make you feel like shit kind of mentality. Yeah. Which, as a parent, is really not the way you should be doing things.
Not a good look.
We are all here for consequences. Don't idiot people come on here and be like, well, sometimes you have to reinforce consequences on your children. I get that. But that's not what we're talking about here.
You can do it in a gentle manner.
You can.
This is not gentle at all.
Not.
This is as heavy, ham-fisted as it fucking gets.
Really, though. Really. So that kind of wraps up our thoughts on 8 passengers in their connection to Mormonism.
Yeah. Oh, I did want to mention one thing that's kind of interesting. The husband, B-list, Mr. Clean.
That's what the subreddit calls him. We'll link it below.
Yeah. Shout out to r/8 passengers snark, because we did glean a lot of information from there, and we are grateful for their snarking and everything like that. But he works. What the hell's his name? Kevin works for BYU. BYU just recently changed their their hiring policies to not just living the honor code as an instructor, professor, or a staff member, but also that you have to have a Mormon temple recommend in order to work at BYU. So that is an extra tacit agreement and stamp of approval of, yes, I am cool with what the church does, to the point where I will go through their hoops to maintain my employment. So
it's true.
Just another extra added layer of, yeah, they are all in on this shit that the Mormon church preaches.
So every time you watch them, every time you look at their ads, watch their ads, skip their ads, whatever you're doing, you are funding the Mormon church with a lot of dollars, because they make a lot of money. So just keep that in mind the next time you're thinking about watching this lovely family.
Lovely kids, not so cute parents.
All the love for their poor kids dealing with all this bullshit. That about sums it up. Yay for this tragic nonsense that was this video. So I hope this was helpful in thinking about Mormon family vlogger influencer type people. Yeah,
and honestly, we did kind of gloss over a lot of the kind of big events and things like that. If you'd like to know more, it's out there. Just like Jordan said, we didn't want to just, ad nauseum beat the subjects to death, because there's a lot of other greater and more in-depth videos that creators have made. If you want to learn about these, we just wanted to come at it from the Mormon angle because we're ex-Mormons and we talk about this stuff. So, well, if you stuck around, thank you for sticking around. If you have migrated from some of the 2 amazing channels that have plugged us in the last week, namely Mormon Stories podcast channel or Fundy Fridays, we are confirmed Jennanites, as Jen put in her video last week. She's amazing. If you have not yet done so, hit that subscribe button. We would love to have you here on our channel, and you can see more fun and awesome, funny content here that we will be doing in the future. Massive shout out to the huge influx of patrons that we've gotten recently. You are amazing. I rewarded those who rushed to our support on our Patreon with a little clip of us being goofballs.
It was a bloopers video.
It was a little bloopers reel.
And it's funny as hell.
When I make those videos, I often will go, this is kind of embarrassing. And every single time I keep them in because people will probably think it's funny. I just don't like to put it out there all the time to the general public. So we keep it for the patrons. So if that's something you'd be interested, go over and check out our Patreon. We had a poll for a video that we're going to do at the end of the month that was decided by the patrons. If that's something you'd also like to participate in the future, go check it out. We also have our social media platforms, TikTok and Instagram. You can find us at Jordan and McKay. You can find the links of those in the description of this YouTube video. Sorry, people who are just listening. If you'd like to participate in our Discord community, we have the link of that also in the description. We have a lot of awesome people there in the Discord, and it's a good time. It's an easy way to get in contact with us. Also, if you'd like to check out some merch, we have our Etsy store, Happy Brain Collective, and the Teespring linked in the description, and you can get some cool Jordan and McKay style merch. There's not anything that we have that says Jordan and McKay explicitly, but
Because I feel like that's weird.
I'm not a really big fan of doing that. That's just me. Anyway, if you made it this far, thank you very much. We love all of you, and we will see you next time.